Is your sales pipeline strong enough to meet your revenue goals? Hi, my name is Bill Rice and I'm with Age Lead Store. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the sales pipeline and how to do the math to make sure that there's enough activity and there's enough leads in there in order to actually hit your sales quota or your revenue goal for each and every month. We all know that slow and steady wins the race, but the question is, what truly is that pace? And do we have the ability to finish the race? All that and more in this episode. Stay tuned. Okay, like I said, today we're going to do some math. And I find so often with sales folks that I work with and sales teams that I work with that they haven't actually done the math to figure out whether or not their sales pipeline can support the revenue goals or the sales quota they've set for themselves in any given month. Oftentimes we'll set some number that say, hey, X amount of deals needed to be delivered or closed in any given month, or maybe we have a revenue goal. Hey, I'd like to make this amount of money in a month, and that goal is set relatively arbitrary without any sort of kind of back-end math to figure out whether or not I'm doing enough activity, I have enough leads, I have enough going on in my sales pipeline to actually get me to my ultimate goal. And then the second part of that often is left out is just understanding what my daily and weekly pace need to be to figure out whether or not I'm going to land there at the end of the month. So I prepared a fairly simple spreadsheet that I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to walk through kind of how the math works so that you can start with your sales quota, which is what most of us end up doing. Whether we should or should not is a whole different discussion. But we actually start with that number, and then we're going to sort of back into the math to figure out whether or not that math is going to work out for you in the end of the month. All right, so let's take a look at my spreadsheet. Okay, so let's take a look at my sales pipeline forecasting tool. And you can see it's a relatively simple spreadsheet, and I'll share it with you. It's a Google Sheet. And for the purpose of this video, to kind of make it as general as possible, but give you as much detail as possible, I made some fairly large assumptions, but you can easily take this spreadsheet and you can alter the assumptions. You can make it a sales quota instead of a revenue goal. You can base it based on your commissions. If you're actually running the business, you can actually truly make it against revenue. So there's all kinds of little tweaks that you can make in here, but we're not going to get hung up on that. We're trying to just basically show you how to set a goal and then how to back in and determine whether or not you're creating enough sales activity and you've got enough in your pipeline to actually get you there at the end of each and every month. So let's take a look at this. Everything in yellow that I've kind of boxed in are my fundamental assumptions. Those are the first things you got to look at, because every sales team, depending on your product and your industry, is going to be a little bit different as to what you can expect from these different characteristics. And these are actually the kind of the fundamental assumptions that determine what my outcome is going to be. So it's really important to kind of tune those in to things that are real for you, real expectations, real results. And it may take you a couple months of kind of tracking these to figure out what those numbers should be, but you can always start with something. All right, so we're going to start with revenue goal. And again, this can be revenue goal. This could be based on the commissions that you're getting paid. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that I want to make $120,000 a year selling something. This could be insurance, could be mortgage, could be a product, could be services. It doesn't matter. Again, the math all backs in the same, right? So I want to make $120,000. I do the very simple math to back that down into a monthly number, because again, most of us are focused on a monthly number because we're held accountable to a sales quota or delivering a certain amount of revenue every month. Even if you're a business owner, the monthly number is pretty significant and important. So I'm going to take that 120. I'm just going to simply divide it by 12 to give me a monthly number. So I need $10,000 in revenue per month to hit my goal and my target for the year. Then the next important assumption is, what is the average deal size? So again, this could be the commission that I make on kind of the average size mortgage or insurance policy that I sell, the actual revenue that I generate every time I sell a product. So again, whatever you're selling, what is that average deal size? This is a really important assumption here, to just know on average, how much do you get paid when you sell something. All right, then we're going to take that number and we're going to back it in. We're going to divide it into that monthly revenue number. In this case, 10,000. That's going to tell me, in order to hit my revenue target, I need to sell 10 things this month. I need to sell 10 things every single month. So from there, I've got kind of the basic math, and all of us can kind of do that. And a lot of us actually do that to figure out what my sales quota is, but we forget to do the rest of this math. And this is the math, I think, that is super critical to gauge and drive your sales process month over month. And that is, what is the activity that I need to be doing in order to push things through my sales funnel? And then at what rate do I need to be converting, or at what rate do I need to be pushing deals through that sales process? So this is the way I broke down my conversion rate assumptions. I actually took the percentage it takes to move from one stage to another, and I want to try to pick out stages that I can kind of measure and identify. So I'm going to be starting at the bottom of the funnel and going up, right? So I know what my quota is, so I need to back up to figure out at what stage of the funnel, as it kind of gets bigger, how many leads do I need in each of those buckets of the funnel. All right, so the first one is so how many sales qualified leads turn into closed deals? So that's my first conversion rate. So sales qualified leads turning into closed deals. And for me, sales qualified lead means that the person can actually purchase from you, right? They have the capacity, they have the need or the want. So when I get to this stage in the funnel, again, I'm down towards the bottom of the funnel. At this point, I know I've had some conversations with them, at least one or two probably, and I know they have the capacity, the ability, the need, the want to buy from me. I just need to get them to a deal and to an offer that they will accept and close them. And so from that sales qualified lead, meeting all those qualifications to a closing, I can generally close that at about a 20% rate. So about 20% of those sales qualified leads will ultimately turn into closed deals and probably happen within a given month. That's the other thing that's important. These are flowing within a month time cycle. And then the second piece that I can measure, the second part of that funnel, is just a little bit higher up. And those are leads, okay, that turn into sales qualified leads. So leads that I'm actually qualifying and turning into sales qualified leads. Again, some level of intent to buy from me and the ability to buy from me and the want and need, right? But a lead, so what's the definition of a lead? This can go all over the map, but just for simplicity, to me, a lead is simply someone that I have name, email, phone number, and they've shown some interest in what I sell. So there's some level of intent to be interested, not necessarily have the capacity, not necessarily have the true want or need, but they've shown some interest in actually doing business with me or buying what I'm selling. That to me is a lead, okay? And so from leads to sales qualified, actually convert at a very high rate, right? So about 75% of the leads that I get will turn into sales qualified leads. And there's a reason to do that. So your number will vary depending on kind of how you get leads. But in my context, a lead, in most contexts, I think if you're kind of doing the right things in that lead to sales qualified process, they'll probably convert at a pretty high rate because you're doing some work to turn that lead, to gather that intent on that lead. And so if you're doing that right, again, most of those will convert. So that's my assumption there. About 75% of those will actually turn into sales qualified leads that I'll try to close. And then the last bucket here is kind of the highest level bucket. And this is the conversion from contacts to leads. And so this is a really important definition. So to me, a contact is a name, a phone number, and an email, and hopefully reasonably valid, but that's okay. That's not terribly important to me as well. A contact means that I just have a name, a phone number, and an email, and my conversion rate kind of makes an assumption that a good portion of those they'll be incorrect or they'll get out of date, those sorts of things, because contacts can come from all kinds of different places. They can come from just random lists. They can come from my friends and family. They can be referrals. They could be just things that I've accumulated over time at conferences and people I've run into. It could be purchasing age leads. We're going to talk about that a little bit. This is a great source of actual contacts because they're truly contacts, but they're also kind of leads, right? Age leads. So some portion of them will just kind of straight be contacts. Because maybe the intent is so old that maybe the intent is no longer there that would kind of really make them a true lead, but the contact information is there. So again, we can talk about that down in our comments here. You can ask me all kinds of questions about my assumptions here. What's a lead? Where do you get contacts from? Ask all that in the discussion section, and I'll get in there and talk back and forth to you about your specific situation. Okay, so it's important to kind of go through and talk through each of these pieces so that you'll understand how the math is made, right? Okay, we have all of our fundamental assumptions in here now. Sales qualified lead to a close is a 20% conversion rate. That's, close to sales qualified. And then my lead to sales qualified lead, that next section in my sales funnel, about 75% conversion rate there. And then my contact to leads, the biggest top of the funnel, is relatively low. I'm assuming a whole bunch of spoilage in here. It's about 2% will actually turn into a true lead. So now I'm going to take those numbers and those assumptions and figure out how many leads do I need to have in each of these buckets, and how much activity do I need to be doing throughout the month in order to move how many of these things do I need to move into the different buckets? Okay, so starting at the top, I just simply do the math, right? And the interesting thing here is this math is a tiny bit funny, right? So I'm going to take my 10, because I'm moving from the bottom of the funnel to the top of the funnel, right? So I'm going to take my sales quota, the number of things that I need to sell, that 10, and I'm going to divide it by the conversion rate, which will give me the next big number. So a lot of times, you're multiplying percentages times that number. In this case, because we're trying to move up the funnel, we're trying to get a bigger number, trying to figure out how many things or leads or contacts do I need to put in order to get those 10. I'm actually taking that 10, I'm dividing it by the 20%, and as a result, I'm going to find out that in order to hit my sales quota, I need to produce in any given month 50 sales qualified leads. I need to be working on 50 sales qualified leads. So in that bucket, if I have 45, I'm going to fall short. If I have 60, I might exceed my quota, right? But I know that without assuming that conversion rate is right on, if I don't have 50 in there, then I'm going to fall short, right? So that tells me my first sort of level of activity. I need to do enough activity to create 50 sales qualified leads every single month. Now, it sounds a bit daunting, but as we talk about each of these buckets, remember, initially you may have to gather a bunch of these leads together, but over time, hopefully you're going to fill it up, and then you're just incrementally moving every month people into that. So your contacts, which is going to turn out, you're going to see here in a second, is going to be a really big number. You're just going to have to add a few more each month. So the work, assuming that you're building this system in this way, you'll get it full. And age leads is a great way to fill it up in a large quantity all at one time. And then you just need to incrementally add to it as you move things down the funnel and out to close, right? Okay, so I know that I need 50 sales qualified leads. Then I'm going to take that 50 and I'm going to divide it again by my 75. And I know that in order to get 50 sales qualified leads, I need to actually have 67 leads. So people that have names, phone numbers, email addresses, and they've shown some intent or some interest in what I'm selling, I need 67 of those in order to produce 50 sales qualified leads, in order to produce and close 10 sales. And then I go up to my last bucket, very top bucket, and this is the number of contacts. And again, remember, this is a name, a phone number, and an email. Nothing more, right? Nothing more. Hopefully I've done some sort of filtering on this, but generally this number is so low that I'm taking into account that they may not have any interest or intent, right? But I do need to move through them so that I can find those people that will ultimately become leads, sales qualified, and close. And in order to do that, I take that 67 and I divide it by that 2%, and it creates a very large number, 3,333. Now that sounds like a big number. And this is why it's important to use very affordable sources of data. If you try to accumulate this number of contacts by buying real-time leads or actually just trying to one-off get this from your friends and family, you'll never get there. So often I see salespeople not realizing that this is ultimately a game of large numbers. They will just their sales activity will consist of reaching out to a couple of friends and family and say, hey, do you know anybody that needs insurance? Do you know anybody that needs a mortgage, right? And you just can't get to the numbers you need. So at some point, you need to start to think in a mentality of list building and database building, and you need to look at some of these other sources of data where you can buy in probably very affordably large quantities of people that you know will potentially be interested, or at least are a good solid contact that you can start to build that database. Because ultimately, any kind of sales with any kind of quota, you're going to have these kind of conversion numbers, and you're going to need to get to a point where you actually have a database with a lot of people inside of it. All right, so that's the math. Those are the numbers, and you can back through that. I'm going to link to the spreadsheet down below here in the comments area and in the description area, and so you can feel free to take that spreadsheet, make your own copy, change up the assumptions, play with the numbers, and then ultimately ask me all the questions that you would like to down in the comment section, and we can have a full dialogue about this. So hopefully this has been helpful. I know that oftentimes when I show this for the first time to a sales team or individual salespeople, they're a little bit overwhelmed. So I'm here to help you. But again, hopefully it's been helpful. If it has, give us a thumbs up. That helps support us, allows us to get that content, this kind of content, out to more salespeople, and then ultimately enables us to do more of the production of this type of content and get more of your questions answered, and hopefully take you into a shortcut to success. Again, if you've enjoyed this, we would love to have you here each and every week. So subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and hit that little bell, which will notify you every time we publish a new piece of content. We try to do an episode each and every week. So we hope that you're going to join us next week. Again, hit that like button. We'll see you next week. If there are any questions, down in the comments, I'm there all the time trying to answer your questions, and also give me ideas of what you would like me to cover next. With all that said, we'll see you next time.